Welcome back to Idaho Hook and Hunt. Today's trip is from July of 2025. This is on Payette Lake again. This trip is filled with a lot of bouncing rods, as well as some jumping kokanee. This trip happened because I was contacted last year. I had already been putting a lot of my videos on Facebook, but they weren't, designed for YouTube at the time. But I had been contacted by a guide, that's him right there, out of Utah. His name's Marlo Stevens, and he wanted to come up and kokanee fish with me because he'd seen some of the stuff that I had put on Facebook. And so this is the trip that came out of that. We are having a good time on Payette Lake. We did pretty well. Now, it started out, this was a Friday to Saturday trip. I got out there before him on Friday afternoon, and that's what we're seeing right here. I was alone on my boat for about the first hour, and it got a little hectic. The video doesn't do it justice, but it was quite windy on this particular afternoon. So I'm out on my boat alone. I do have a tiller drive gas motor that I troll with. And so you have to kind of keep an eye on the motor, especially when it's windy. Well, I ended up getting a double while I was out there all alone. So I'm trying to control the boat and handle a double, get both fish in the net at the same time. It was pretty hectic, but that's what we all kokanee fish for. That's the best part of it, is when it gets chaotic out there on the water. So getting a double into the boat on a windy day when you're all alone can be a little bit tricky. You'll see as I get this fish into the net, it's actually a pretty decent sized fish. It's probably a 16 to 17 inch kokanee. I do get him into the net, and then I gotta try and do things quickly so I can get to the other rod. You'll see as I get this one out of the net here. I did get this one on the white and pink Kokobo Dodger that you see pictured here. I get him unhooked and out of the net as quickly as I can. You'll see I just kind of flop him into the bottom of the boat here so I can have that net prepared and ready to get this other fish on the other side of the boat. At the same time, trying to keep the boat from spinning around on me while I do it. Now, something that we're going to talk a little bit about in this video is we're going to talk a little bit about kokanee size. What factors influence their size? If we should be keeping small fish, if we should be releasing small fish, and what we can do with our reservoirs and our lakes this year, what we're looking at as far as size and why they are where they are. So stick with me as we go through this. I think you'll probably enjoy it. We'll get to that as we get into tomorrow's fishing. Something that I do find is I find that afternoons, as you see in this video, tend to be a little on the slow side. I generally prefer to fish mornings. What I find is that mornings tend to be pretty good. It tends to slow throughout the day. And that includes into the afternoon. I find that a lot of times afternoons are a lot slower than mornings are. Now, you can catch fish all day long, and I do, but I usually catch the majority of my fish fairly early. As I get this one into the boat here, you're going to see this is on that pink and green Kokobo Dodger called the Majestic. I've talked about this one several times in other videos. This was a great Dodger for me all of last year. The colors on this are they're great colors to use. This is right after I caught those two. You can see here, those two are actually still in the net. I hadn't even gotten them out of the net yet. And my other rod, the same rod that got hit the first time with that pink and white Dodger, gets hit again. I do remember from last year that this third one was a trout, which I didn't keep, but it was nice to get three fish, one after another, right here in the afternoon. So right after this, Marlo does arrive. I pick him up at the dock. We do get a few more fish in the evening before dark, but we'll pick this up in the morning as we get back out on the water. Welcome to the next morning and a beautiful sunrise over Payette Lake. Now, I'd like to introduce you this morning to Marlo Stevens. Marlo is a kokanee guide from Utah. He guides on Flaming Gorge, Fontanelle, and Strawberry reservoirs. His guide service is Blue Water Charters. If you're interested in chartering in Utah for kokanee at some point, I will link the website for his guide service in the description to this video. We will sit back as he puts the first kokanee of the morning in the boat here. Now, something I often do when it's low light is I will run either glow dodgers or I'll run darker colors like this. This was the purple and copper Kokomo dodger. In the mornings when you have low light conditions, I find that either dark or glow in the dark dodgers tend to work fairly well. We had pretty good action all morning. As I said earlier, I find that mornings tend to be steadier action than afternoons do. You can see right here, that's that Mama Hog rod in my hand right there. I've mentioned on other videos that I do have a discount code for these Mama Hog rods. I will put the website for Mama Hog rods in the description of this video as well. And also the discount code, which is Hook and Hunt, which will actually get you a pretty good discount on these rods. It's about $45 off of them. So if you're interested in a good kokanee rod, check out Mama Hog and go get you a discount on one of these. So as we finish up this next clip, the one coming up here is interesting. Marlo thought that there was actually a fish on one of these lines, but that's actually just a fish jumping. Which means that fish was feeding shallow, coming up through those plankton balls that were on the surface early in the morning. So this clip right here, this rod is actually attached to the planer board out to the left side of the boat there. Now, I already mentioned that this was July of 2025. Water temperature was relatively warm on this particular day because it is late in the season, and we were fishing at about 30 feet down. So you might wonder, why am I running planer boards when we're fishing 30 feet down? Well, what you're going to see here as Marlo brings up this rod is you're going to see a clip weight attached on this line. You'll see that right here in just a moment. I have found that I can run clip weights with my planer boards, and it works exceptionally well. There's that clip weight. So the way I was running this particular rod is I was running out about 50 feet of line, and then I was clipping the clip weight on and then attaching it to my planer board and sending it out on the planer board. That is that green and pink Dodger again. But it works exceptionally well sending them out on the planer board with a clip weight, because you can get down to 30 feet and get away from the boat a little bit as well. Okay, I told you earlier that I had a request from one of my subscribers to talk a little bit about kokanee size. So this reminded me of an experience that I had last year. I was fishing on one of our reservoirs closer to the valley here. And as I was taking my boat out of the water, there was another boat pulling out next to me, and the guy had also been kokanee fishing. And I asked him how he did, and his response was kind of surprising to me. He goes, "Oh, the kokanee fishing around here has gotten terrible. Fishing game has messed this whole area up. There's no good kokanee fishing left around here. I've been doing this for 25 years." And I said, "Well, Anderson's been pretty good this year." He goes, "Oh yeah, but they're all tiny." He said and people are taking those fish, which means there's never going to be a big fish in there ever again, because people take all these little ones out. Well, when he said that, I realized that, for a guy who's been fishing for 25 years, he had no concept of how kokanee size is affected by population and food source. And so that's what I want to talk about a little bit today. What he didn't understand is that kokanee are a density-dependent fish. So the more kokanee you have in a reservoir, the smaller they tend to be, because there's a limiting food resource in those reservoirs. The other thing that tends to happen is like what we had last year in Anderson, where there were so many kokanee in there and they were so small, is a kokanee that normally will hold over for 3 years in Anderson was spawning out last year at 2 because of lower food resources, so they spawn earlier. And so something to understand is that when you have a lot of small fish in a reservoir, the answer is not to put them back. When fish are small, the best thing you can do is to take those fish out of the reservoir, start and reduce their numbers as much as you can, because what we had a couple of years ago in Anderson, where the fish were 18 to 21 inches, was we didn't have a lot of fish in there. And so there was abundant food resources, so the fish grew much larger, and they held over for a third year to become those 18 to 21 inch kokanee. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that having 18 to 21 inch kokanee is healthy. It just means there's not a lot of fish. What we really want to see is we'd love to see 14 to 16 inch kokanee regularly in our lakes and reservoirs in this area. But in order for that to happen, the populations have to be at a healthy level to have those sizes. Now, lakes like Anderson has a lot of fish because there was a really good natural reproduction back in 2023 and apparently in 2024 as well. And so that's why we have so many fish in Anderson this year as well as last year. So what we need to do is we need to remove some of those fish to bring down those numbers so that we can get back to a more balanced number in that reservoir, and then we will see our size increase. The answer is not to put back the little fish because they'll get bigger next year. They're not going to. Those fish that are in there this year that right now are 11, 12 inches are probably going to spawn this year at 13 to 14 inches. And so we need to take as many out as we can to let those fish get a little bit bigger. Now, another thing also regarding size of fish. I told you this is July. I don't remember exactly what the water temperature was on this particular day, but it's probably somewhere around 70 degrees. Another thing to keep in mind is kokanee do not survive well in water that's this warm. So even if you catch small kokanee in July, you should keep them because they're likely going to die anyway. So as a general rule, I don't release kokanee unless it's very early in the spring and they're small and I bring them in very quickly. Then there's a decent chance that they're going to survive. When the water temperature is below about 60 degrees, they have a decent chance of survival. But once this water gets above about 65, their chance of survival goes way, way down. And you're better off to just keep those fish, because otherwise you're leaving it to the eagles and the ospreys and the seagulls to eat those fish. So we'll get this last double landed here. Marlo just caught the biggest kokanee of the day right here as part of this double. And then the one that I bring in is a pretty good sized fish as well. Here's Marlo's fish right here. Pretty solid kokanee. And there is the last fish of the day for us. This was my take for the day. Thank you for watching, and we will see you on the next one.